Unbelievable secrets of Caleb. How a faithful warrior defied all odds to enter the promised land. Few knew what truly happened that night in the land of Canaan. The sky was a deep indigo, filled with glimmers of distant stars. But the air was thick with tension. Caleb stood, heart pounding. He was one of the 12 spies sent to scout the promised land. But what he saw sent shivers down his spine. Walls of towering cities, menacing giants, and lush, fertile valleys awaited. Was this a land of promise or peril? The journey began in Egypt, where the cries of oppression echoed in the night. The Israelites were trapped, enslaved, longing for freedom. Moses led them out with miracles that shook the earth. Parting the Red Sea seemed wild, but the mountains that loomed ahead felt more daunting. Now, the culmination of years spent wandering was here. Canaan, a land flowing with milk and honey, or was it a place of doom? The others fumbled, whispering tales of woe, but Caleb's spirit surged. He remembered the promises, the hope that hung in the air like the sweet scent of ripe figs waiting to be tasted. But as they drew closer, their fears transformed into ghostly shapes around them. Each step pressed harder against Caleb's chest. Doubts flickered through the group like shadows moving. The giants were real. The fortified walls were real. Were they strong enough to withstand the challenges before them? Caleb's mind raced. He saw the land with a different gaze. He felt the presence of something greater, a vision waiting to unfold. The night brought strange sounds. A rustle here, a distant growl there. He felt eyes watching, judging. It was more than the unknown land. It was the unshakable fear that bound most of the spies. They recoiled, agitated, while Caleb's heart thumped a steadfast drumbeat of faith. He dared to believe when others faltered. He knelt, his knees brushing against the rough earth, the coolness grounding him as whispers from the past clashed with the uncertainty of the present. What if he was destined for greatness? But what if he embraced folly? As dizzying thoughts twisted in his mind, a burning resolve rose. Caleb could either retreat in fear or face the giants. The night deepened. Caleb looked at the flickering ember of hope within him. This land awaited a champion. But would he stand alone? What answers would the dawn reveal? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The morning sun crept over the horizon, painting the land with hues of gold and amber. Caleb stood, his heart still racing from the night's turmoil, yet a sense of peace began to wash over him. Around him, the camp stirred, unaware of the soul-stirring conflict that had taken place under the cover of darkness. The other spies huddled together, their faces etched with worry, exchanging fearful glances, each replaying the terrifying visions of giants and fortifications. As Caleb stepped closer, he could hear them murmuring. Those walls, they are impossible to breach. Those people, they are like the Anakim, strong and fierce. Their words twisted into a collective lament, echoing the fear that had taken root in their hearts. But Caleb could not allow himself to be swept away in the torrent of despair. He took a deep breath, grounding himself in the memories of the liberation from Egypt. The splitting of the Red Sea echoed in his mind, and he felt the stirrings of courage. At that moment, Caleb resolved to speak. We must not let fear lead us. The land is indeed fruitful, and we are strong in the eyes of our God, he declared, his voice trembling yet resilient. The group turned their wary eyes toward him. You saw the giants, Caleb. Their strength is unmatched. One of the spies protested, his eyes betraying the tremor of his voice. Do we forget so easily? The same God who parted the sea can deliver us from whatever stands in our way. Caleb's gaze pierced through the clouds of doubt, searching for the flicker of belief he hoped to ignite. Every word he spoke felt like a prayer, a declaration of faith in the face of encroaching shadows. But silence fell heavy in the air. The doubt that plagued the others weighed down their spirits. Caleb looked out over the vast expanse of Canaan. What if they never tasted the sweetness of its fruits? What if they turned back out of fear, abandoning their destiny? He knelt once more, touching the dew-kissed grass beneath him. The land stretched wide, inviting yet daunting. His heart weighed these thoughts. They were knots filled with uncertainty, urging him to find the deeper meaning behind this test of faith. The God of their liberation would not lead them to abandon them now. Would their hearts remain hardened? Or would they hear the gentle call to trust in the unseen? And in that moment of stillness, Caleb felt a presence, a whispering wind that swept through the trees, as though the land itself awaited their acceptance. But who would heed the call? Who would rise to meet both their fears and their hopes? Caleb rose, his faith burning brighter than the morning sun. He looked upon his companions, not with disdain at their hesitation, but with understanding. Everyone had giants to face. Sometimes they were not just of flesh and bone. Would he stand alone in this battle for belief, or could he inspire them to lift their eyes beyond their fear? As the sun climbed higher, painting the world in light, he wondered, would the dawn mark the beginning of their reckoning or their retreat? And in facing the giants ahead, who would they truly become? As the sun continued to rise, its golden rays illuminating the weary faces of the spies, Caleb sensed the weight of history resting upon their shoulders. They were caught in the fragile moment between freedom and fear, and the future of their people hung precariously in the balance. The air thrummed with a tension that felt heavier than the armor they had worn in battles past. "Let us recount the stories of our ancestors," Caleb implored, stepping closer to them, his voice steady with purpose. "We bear witness to the great deeds of our God. When faced with armies greater than us, did he not deliver us? When our backs were against the wall at the Exodus, did he not provide a way? The same God who sowed the seeds of doubt among the Egyptians can cause the walls of Jericho to fall." His words began to stir a flicker of remembrance in some, but for others, the shadows of doubt still clung tightly. "Caleb, we cannot ignore what we saw," another spy replied, his brow furrowed. "The Anakim are not tales. They are reality. How can we know that our God will act again?" Caleb's heart ached for those who could not see. "We have tasted the bitter waters of despair, but it is faith that promises sweetness," he replied gently, hoping to pierce the veil of fear that had enveloped their hearts. "Faith does not demand understanding. It asks only for trust. Let us remember how we were freed from chains, how we crossed a sea, how manna was provided in the wilderness. If the Lord has brought us this far, can we not believe he still walks with us? Isn't that the promise of our covenant?" In a quiet corner, Joshua, his silent companion through trials, stood, listening intently. He had often praised Caleb's unwavering spirit, but now he felt a stirring rising within him. "Caleb," he called out, stepping forward, "if our hearts waver, perhaps we are blinded by our eyes. Can we not choose to see beyond the giants and fortifications? What if the very presence of the enemy signals that we are close to our promise?" A ripple of understanding stirred among a few, igniting curiosity where there once was only fear. However, doubt still held a potent grip on others who were shaking their heads, unwilling to yield. Caleb's voice crackled with urgency. "We have stood before the Red Sea. We have been fed by quail in the wilderness. Do we not see the patterns of God's faithfulness? He desires us to enter this land, just as he has promised." With each passing moment, Caleb contemplated the larger narrative at play, the spiritual journey they were destined to undertake not just as a physical struggle, but a call to transform their hearts. Would they only see the giants standing before them, or could they see the Spirit urging them to rise? As he gazed upon the land before him, a thought flickered in his mind. What if their fears were an unintentional test of their faith? Could the giants be viewed as a mirror reflecting their inner turmoil, their doubts, their past traumas? The land was not just a place. It was a culmination of their journey, a chance to transcend the limitations of their minds. Caleb turned his attention to the heart of the camp, and in that moment, He noticed a small group of children playing by the edge of the campfire, full of innocence and laughter. They were untouched by the fears clouding the adults. "Look at them," he pointed out. "They know nothing but trust. They play in the light, unafraid of shadows. Could we learn from their faith?" A hushed silence fell upon the assembly, as the adults shifted their gaze towards the children. Could it be that the path forward rested not in their formidable strength but in the simple trust that they lacked? But as hope began to stir within him, Caleb recognized another truth: the journey to the promised land would not be without struggle. The challenge of faith was not to eliminate fear but to find the strength to act despite it. As the morning light continued its relentless rise, casting away the last vestiges of night, Caleb pondered deeply. Will we become a people so defined by the giants we dread, or will we turn our hearts toward the whispers of hope that beckon us? The question hung in the air like the scent of impending rain, waiting for an answer yet to be revealed. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, illuminating the terrain of Canaan like a vast canvas of promise and peril, Caleb felt an unfamiliar stirring in his heart. It was as if the land itself pulsed with potential, a gentle reminder of the uncharted future that awaited them. He stole a glance at Joshua, whose brow was furrowed in contemplation, and wondered if the pressure of their circumstances was weighing heavily on them both. "Joshua," he ventured, his voice low yet imbued with determination, "what do you sense? In our fear of the Anakim, could we be overlooking the might of our God?" The question fell between them like a gentle breeze, seeking to untangle the knots of uncertainty that had twisted in their hearts. Joshua turned to Caleb, taking a deep breath as if preparing to share a fragile realization. "I sense the land is not merely a destination. It is indeed a manifestation of God's promises. But I wonder, are we prepared to see it as more than just land to claim? Is it a test of our very being? Can we embrace it, despite the giants?" Before Caleb could answer, a voice rose from the gathering crowd. "But what of the fear that grips our hearts, prevents us from moving forward?" A woman cried out, her face radiant yet stricken, reflecting the divided emotions within her. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Caleb could see the temptation of fear like a chain binding them to their past. "Ah, but remember this," he said, raising his hands to still the chatter. "Fear is a natural response, but it need not govern our actions. If we dwell only on the size of our adversaries, we will become shackled by our own perceptions. Instead, we must hold fast to the promise that the one who has called us to this moment will guide us through." The children by the campfire, still blissfully unaware of the tensions, chased one another with a joy untainted by doubt. Their laughter echoed around the encampment, sending ripples through the hearts of those present. Caleb's heart warmed at the sight, but it also stirred the deeper question that he could not escape. Could these children's untainted trust serve as a bridge for them to overcome the chasm of fear they faced? "Let us heed the wisdom we see in them," he urged, gesturing towards the children. What would they choose to do when faced with giants? To run or to dance in the presence of the challenge? We too can choose our response. We can step forward in trust, allowing faith to guide our hands, rather than clutching tightly to the shackles of fear. Joshua nodded thoughtfully, his gaze unwavering as he absorbed Caleb's words. "Yet courage is not the absence of fear, is it? It is the decision to act despite fear. How do we find such courage when the shadows loom so large?" Caleb paused, looking out over the land before them. The allure of the promised land mingled with the daunting presence of Canaan's defenders. "Perhaps courage lies not only in the face of giants but in understanding our purpose here," he replied. "This journey, this battle, is less about claiming land and more about reclaiming our identity as a people of faith. It's about remembering who we are and whose we are." A sense of anticipation stirred among the spies, and a flicker of light crept into their eyes. But still some held back. The atmosphere trembled with the uncertainty of their decision, as history seemed to brush against them, their choice teetering on the cusp of destiny. Caleb sensed the limit of their faith was both a gift and a burden. What if the giants are not the true adversaries? He pondered aloud, his voice resonating with a depth of thought. What if our deepest enemy is within us, our fear, our disbelief? As we conquer the land, so too must we conquer ourselves. As the day advanced, fueled by a burgeoning resolve, Caleb and Joshua began to inspire their fellow spies. Stories of miracles unfurled from their lips, igniting a shared spark of hope. But lingering doubt remained, threatening to unravel the fragile progress they had made. In a moment of stillness, Caleb reflected profoundly on the nature of faith. Is faith a blind leap, or a cautious step into the unknown, bolstered by past promises? Will we anchor ourselves to the God who has led us this far, or will we remain hesitant, weighed down by visible giants? The question echoed within him, a lingering uncertainty that danced like shadows at dusk. The journey ahead was fraught with challenges, and within each challenge lay a deeper spiritual enigma, one that they must unravel, not just for the sake of entering a land, but for claiming their rightful identity as a people of promise. As the sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the encampment, Caleb felt a deep stirring within his spirit. The land of Canaan lay stretched before him like a tapestry woven with promises and challenges, each thread glinting with the light of possibility and the weight of fear. The air was thick with anticipation, yet a murmur of doubt still coursed through the assembled crowd. "Joshua," Caleb called, his voice steady but laced with urgency, "let us not be swayed by what lies before us. We have walked through the wilderness, seen the wonders of our God, and tasted his provision. This same God has not brought us this far to abandon us now." In the stillness that followed, Joshua's gaze shifted toward the horizon where the towering figures of the Anakim stood like sentinels against the backdrop of an azure sky. "And yet, Caleb, their strength is formidable," he replied, pondering the truth that even the strongest flames must take care not to be extinguished by the winds of doubt. Does the promise of the land outweigh the terror of the giants? Caleb understood the tempest within Joshua. That is the question we must confront, my friend. The giants may be a physical manifestation of our fears, but they pale in comparison to the power of God that resides within us. Remember, we are not merely scouts. We are instruments of his will. Drawn closer, the people began to lean in, seeking courage from the wisdom of their leaders. "Each of you carries a story," Caleb continued, his voice rising with passion, "of deliverance, of adventure, of miracles witnessed and faith deepened. These are our weapons against fear. In our shared history, is there not enough evidence to trust in his promise once more?" Just then, a voice called from the back. A young man, perhaps no older than 20, stepped forward trembling. "What if this act of faith brings us ruin? How do we know that the ground we step on will not be our grave?" The collective intake of breath revealed the resonance of this question. Caleb recognized the raw vulnerability it unveiled. "But this is where faith triumphs," he answered softly. "Is it not a paradox that courage often demands stepping into the unknown, embracing uncertainty? What collapse lies before us if we refuse to advance for fear of failing? We must choose to engage with what confounds us." The boy's eyes darted from Caleb to Joshua, wrestling with his apprehension. Joshua extended his hand, his voice steady as granite. "Fear is real, but we are not called to be of fear. We are chosen to be unleashed. How many are prepared to trust the God who has sustained us?" Amidst the tension, a change flickered through the assembly, like the first light of dawn breaking through night's hold. Before long, one by one, they began to nod, and there was a glimmer of hope where doubt had once been thick. Caleb felt a wave of gratitude wash over him, for he saw a sacred truth in their unity. Perhaps, he mused, the giants we face are not merely physical. Perhaps they represent our deepest fears, fear of failure, abandonment, and the unfamiliar. To conquer this land, we must first stand united against what lies within it. As the discussion swirled, deepening the collective resolve, evening descended, and the campfire flickered with warmth. It became a space where stories of past victories were woven into a tapestry of faith, each account reinforcing the bonds that tied them together. Caleb shared the tale of the plagues in Egypt, Joshua recounted their crossing of the Red Sea, and others chimed in with recollections that celebrated their identity as a selected people. Yet, in the heart of the gathering, a deeper question lingered, one that had no easy answer. Caleb could sense it pressing upon him and the others, an unwanted weight that mingled with excitement. What if our greatest challenge is not the giants we can see, but the doubts we cannot? And as the fire crackled and the stars blinked into existence, they sat knee to knee, imagining the outcomes of their choices. Each spy felt the weight of a divine expectation upon their shoulders, one that represented not just a journey to a land but a confrontation with their own faith. Would they emerge from the shadows of uncertainty, or would they remain bound by their hesitation? As their hearts united around the flame, each flicker bore witness to the decision that loomed ahead. Would they transcend their fears and embrace the reality of God's promises, or would they allow their giants to dictate their fate? The question hung heavy in the night air. What secret truths awaited them in the atmosphere of tomorrow, and would they dare to uncover them? As the fire crackled softly, a hush fell over the assembled Israelites, their faces illuminated by the warm glow. The night was deepening, wrapping around them like a shroud, urging reflection. Caleb, his heart racing with fervor, scanned the circle of familiar faces, each person a thread in the rich tapestry of their shared journey. "Look upon one another," he said, letting the silence stretch momentarily. "You are not alone in your fears. You are surrounded by those who have walked through trials and seen the hand of God move. Each of us carries scars that tell stories of battles fought, yet across those scars lie the blessings of victory." At the edge of the group, an older woman with silver hair, a matriarch known for her wisdom, spoke up, her voice trembling but resolute. "Caleb, what if our scars are reminders not just of battles won, but of battles lost? What if that fear of the unknown stems from the memories of past failures? Can we truly believe we will emerge victorious again?" Her words stirred a murmur among those gathered. They were echoes of doubt, yet a vital part of the fabric of faith. Caleb felt his heart surge with compassion. Indeed, the weight of our past may tempt us to remain stagnant, but behold, the truth in our very name, Israel, wrestles with God. Our journey has always been one of struggle and encounter with the divine. Would you deny the lessons learned in the wrestling? Joshua nodded in agreement, grasping the hand of the old woman. "These giants we fear today do stand tall, but they do not know that we come armed with the resilience formed in the crucible of shared trials. Each wound holds within it the potential for healing, for growth. It is in recognizing our plight that we align ourselves closer to the one who walks beside us." Caleb felt a surge of hope. Light danced upon the faces of the people as they reconnected to the truth that had brought them together. Perhaps the tales of past struggles are not just shadows but stepping stones toward embracing our next chapter. Who among us will dare to affirm our faith in the face of giants? As the stars twinkled above like scattered diamonds, imaginations began to flourish. The bonds of their history wove a shared strength, casting aside the weight of negativity. From one corner, a young woman challenged, "But what of the giants we have yet to acknowledge? The ones lurking in our hearts, the fear of disappointment, the temptation of complacency, the doubt in God's promises?" A solemn quiet fell over them, for these were truths unspoken, the inner giants that often loomed larger than physical threats. Caleb stepped forward once more, compelled to speak to the revelations awakening within the assembly. "Your questions are valid and deserve our attention. Yet, let us bring them forth, as we might bring light into darkness. We are in a season of not merely recounting tales of old, but embodying a narrative anew. The giants of doubt and fear may be daunted by our very act of facing them together. Let us not just question but also proclaim who we were does not define who we can become." Encouraged by his words, the assembly began to share more deeply, considering their fears as they were laid bare. The giants became less fearsome in the light of community. Their legends transformed from tales of despair to symbols of divine possibility. In that sacred space, each soul opened, seeking healing from the scars that had held them back. They began to affirm their shared commitment not just to conquer Canaan but to venture beyond, into the promised faith that awaited them. And as the conversations continued to weave around the flickering flames, their hearts brimming with tentative hope, Caleb posed a final question, one that resonated through the night. What if standing together, we not only confront tomorrow's giants but unveil the power of our shared faith to redefine who we are in God's purpose? What incredible secrets might be revealed within us when we step into the unknown? Together, as the flames consumed the last remnants of wood, the night air grew crisper, a gentle reminder of the imminent dawn. The assembly, a circle of determined spirits, felt the weight of the night settling into their bones. Yet hope lingered like the fire's warm glow. With the stars still twinkling above, Caleb looked into the faces of those around him, recognizing the struggle that lay ahead. They were but a few paces from the threshold of their long-awaited promise, the land of Canaan. "Friends, this night is a crucible," Caleb said softly, urging the group to lean in closer. "Here we cultivate courage, but it cannot flourish unless we dig deep and uncover the layers beneath our fears. In this moment of reflection, do not merely listen to my voice but listen to the echoes within your own hearts." As silence enveloped them once more, they closed their eyes, each attuned to the beating of their own spirits. One by one, fears began to unearth themselves. The fear of loss, of inadequacy, of failing not just themselves but the generations that preceded them. It was profound, seeing vulnerability take form among the warriors of Israel. The younger men, who often donned bravado, spoke in hushed tones of their dread regarding uncertainties that lay ahead from among them. A sturdy man named Eli spoke, "Caleb, the tales of our ancestors whisper of great deeds, and yet here I stand, an ordinary man, trembling at what waits for us in Canaan. How do we ensure that we do not repeat the past, that we do not succumb to failure yet again?" Caleb sensed a budding urgency in Ella's question, a yearning for direction that transcended individual apprehensions. "In every venture of faith, Eli," he replied, "the heart must remain supple and open, for resilience grows where doubt once reigned. Reflect upon our lineage. Abraham journeyed blind into the unknown. Moses faced Pharaoh that the people might be free. They did not diminish in their trials. Rather, they allowed their faith to reshape their narratives." Sensing the abstraction of his words, another voice, this time belonging to Miriam, a quiet yet firm woman, rose from the depths of the circle. "But must we always face these monsters alone? My father told me of the fear that gripped them at the Sea of Reeds, when the enemy approached. How did they find strength when despair threatened to swallow them whole?" Caleb allowed her question to linger in the air before answering with a reflective pause. They stood together, united in fear and desperation, and yet they also stood in hope and faith. They cried out to the Lord, and in their collective cry lay the power of their deliverance. It was a coming together of hearts, pleading for a miracle, and there, in their earnestness, God revealed his glory. We must echo this as we face Canaan. A murmur of agreement floated through the group, voices intertwining into a renewed endogeny, as if a collective awareness began to rise, swelling like the morning tide. Slowly, they began to recognize that perhaps their fears, unveiled and shared, did not have to crush their spirits but could instead forge an unbreakable bond of flesh and blood alliance founded on shared vulnerability. "Let us not be mere spectators to our fate," Caleb encouraged, feeling the heartbeat of the assembly align with his own. "In our willingness to lay bare our fears, the dynamics shift. Our giants transform from emissaries of fright to opportunities to experience the divine." As that night wore on, they explored what it meant to collectively embody faith. Conversations spiraled around the flicker of the fire, words spilling into a tapestry of courage and uncertainty. Each member of the assembly weighed the risk of stepping into the unknown alongside their companions, and as they entwined their fears with their hopes, Caleb sensed the ground beneath them shifting. Yet, as dawn began to paint the horizon in hues of gold and crimson, the deeper mystery lingered. How could they ensure that their resolve would endure in the face of the overwhelming giants that awaited them in the Promised Land? Caleb pondered this as the first light broke through the darkness, illuminating their gathering with the promise of a new day. What secrets lie entwined within the detours of our journey, waiting to be uncovered as we push forward together into the heart of the unknown? As the first rays of sunlight poured over the horizon, splashing the camp with warmth, a sense of cautious optimism filled the air. The assembly, though weary from the night's deep introspection, felt invigorated by the fresh light. They sat close, their circles now united not just by fear but by a newfound camaraderie, each soul bound by the shared commitment to face whatever awaited them. Caleb could feel the stirring of something greater within the group, an awakening of shared purpose, intertwining their individual destinies as they prepared for what lied ahead. Yet beneath that surface warmth, a layer of gnawing uncertainty remained. Caleb shifted his gaze toward the mountain peaks rising in the distance, cloaked in shadows, daring him to take another step, urging him toward the heart of the unknown. Miriam, he called, his voice steadying the rising tide of emotion. Your question cuts deeper than we might realize. If we are united in our fears, we must also share in our resolve. The journey into Canaan is not merely a passage. It is also a tested test of faith against the very monsters we dread. The group began to murmur, recalling ancient tales recounted by their elders. Stories of resilience woven through despair and breakthroughs summoned from despair. Caleb seized on their energy, urging them to delve deeper, to explore the very essence of what it meant to be chosen for this monumental task. What if, within each of our hearts, the secret to conquering these giants lies dormant, waiting to awaken when summoned by faith? Eli, the sturdy man who voiced his fears the night before, now stood with unexpected boldness. How do we awaken this faith, Caleb? How do we trust in something we cannot see, yet feel pulled towards? That is the crux of our journey, Eli, Caleb replied, his brow furrowed in thought. Faith is not merely belief. It's a deliberate choice to trust in the unfathomable. We can look to the signs and wonders of our past, to the plagues of Egypt and the miracle of the sea, but we must recognize that faith thrives not just in the grand narratives but also in the intricate details of our daily lives. Miriam nodded, contemplating Caleb's words. Are these giants, then, not simply obstacles but manifestations of our unresolved fears? The cries of our ancestors ring true in these a chance for each of us to confront our personal demons in the light of the divine promise. Caleb's spirit soared at her insight. Yes. Each step we take into Canaan is a declaration that we refuse to let fear dictate our futures. We will fight, not against flesh and blood but against the doubts that tether us. The giants we face may appear insurmountable, but their shadows are merely reflections of what keeps us from reaching our promise. An uncomfortable silence enveloped the circle, the weight of their shared fears wrapping around them like a fog. It was human to feel the pulsating edge of crisis. Yet within that uncertainty, they had discovered a thread of hope. But as Caleb looked into the eyes of each warrior, he wondered, could faith alone truly equip them for the trials ahead? As the sun rose higher, casting away the remnants of night, Caleb's heart filled with a familiar tension. The shadows of the giants stirred in the distance, looming through the mists of uncertainty. They all understood that the battle was not merely physical. It was also spiritual and emotional. What if the great unknown of Canaan holds more than we can fathom? He mused, the question hanging in the air like an unpulled bowstring. What truths, yet unspoken, await us there? What might we learn not just about ourselves but about the very essence of the promise we seek? As they prepared to gather their belongings and begin their trek toward the land flowing with milk and honey, the assembly shared a silent agreement to forge ahead into the uncertainty, carrying with them both their fears and their dreams. And in that moment, Caleb pondered the deeper mystery. Could they uncover the strength within and the power of community that would enable them to risk everything in the name of their dreams? Where do we find hope in the face of our greatest fears? And how do we navigate the unseen territories of faith that stretch out before us? As the sun climbed higher, its radiance soaked the land, illuminating the faces of the weary travelers, marking the resolve they silently formed. They gathered their meager belongings, each item a testament to the journey ahead. As Caleb led them to the path, an unyielding sense of something deeper than mere survival began to settle amongst the group. There was a shared understanding that their journey could not merely be measured by steps taken, but by the lessons subsumed within each moment. Miriam, her arms crossed, gazed at the mountains ahead. Caleb, she said softly, what if the giants we fear also harbor wisdom? What if their presence is not just a threat to our lives but a challenge to our very understanding of strength? Caleb paused, the question reverberating through his consciousness. Perhaps the giants were not merely enemies to be vanquished but teachers waiting to reveal their lessons through adversity. The deeper the fear, the richer the potential for growth. It was a paradox wrapped in shrouds of enigma. "I do not believe we can unearth this wisdom alone," Caleb finally replied, his voice steady yet laced with vulnerability. "Perhaps part of the answer lies in our ability to share our burdens, to unveil the hidden fears that lie nestled within each heart." With each passing step, the terrain grew treacherous, rocky outcroppings jutted from the earth, each footfall a reminder of the challenges to come. Eli walked alongside Miriam, his brow furrowed in thought. "What if we took turns sharing our fears?" he proposed, allowing the idea to weed its way into the group's dynamics. "What if, by speaking them aloud, we strip them of their power?" A murmur of agreement rippled through the assembly. It became clear that confronting their deepest fears collectively could serve as their shield against the giants looming ever closer. They paused and formed a tighter circle, the air heavy with anticipation as they prepared to offer their truths. Caleb took a deep breath, feeling the air pulse with a kind of divinity. "I will go first," he said resolutely. "I fear that I will lead us into the heart of danger without the wisdom we need to return safe. I often wonder if I possess the capability to guide you toward what has been promised, or if, instead, I shall mislead us into despair." The words rolled off his tongue, a release of weight that had burdened him silently. As silence enveloped them, Eli stepped forward next, his voice shaky yet strong. "I fear the giants will be too strong, too fierce, that we will falter when we find ourselves face to face with them. That in our moment of trial, we will turn away from our promise and forget that we are meant for greatness." Miriam nodded, a tear escaping down her cheek. "My fear is different. I fear that our destination may not be all I have envisioned. What if the land does not flow with milk and honey? What if the promise is an illusion, a dream forever out of reach?" Her vulnerability washed over them, injecting a weight of kinship one by one. Each traveler shared their fears, revealing shadows that danced in their hearts while simultaneously binding them closer in a web of mutual understanding. With each confession came an ethereal light, dispelling the darkness that had gripped them for so long. The raw emotion created a fragile but profound bond that seemed to echo beyond their immediate reality. As they shared, Caleb felt a stirring of something miraculous. Each revelation was not just an exposure of weakness, but rather a seed of empowerment taking root among them. The act of vulnerability draped an aura of resilience, the fear becoming a shared foundation from which their faith could blossom. What if by confronting our fears together, we find a strength greater than the sum of our individual fears? Caleb reflected aloud, the glimmer of hope igniting once more in his chest. What if we not only overcome these giants, but learn from them, allowing us to step into a new legacy? As the group absorbed these reflections, Caleb's heart raced with anticipation. The mountains ahead still loomed, eternal, yet a flicker of understanding ignited a resolute fire within them. Together, they were forging a path not merely toward a destination, but into the very depths of their courage. Were the giants before them merely reflections of their deepest struggles, and could their united faith reveal a strength that transcended fear and doubt? What would they discover about themselves when faced with the trials yet to come? As the sun reached its zenith, casting a warm glow upon the travelers, Caleb could sense the collective heartbeat of the group. Each shared fear, laid bare like the earth beneath their feet, had solidified a bond that transcended mere camaraderie. They were no longer a band of hesitant spies standing on the threshold of uncertainty. They had transformed into a unified force ready to embrace the promised land that awaited them beyond the looming giants. Caleb led them onward, his heart buoyed by the newfound strength coursing through their ranks. The path ahead was still fraught with treachery, but every step resonated with the echoes of their affirmations and shared revelations. "Let us remind ourselves of the truth we discovered in vulnerability," he encouraged. "While fears exist, so too do our capacities for courage and faith. It is in our unity that we draw strength, in our shared commitment to face what lies ahead." With each stride closer to Canaan, the reality of the towering giants became increasingly palpable. They could see them now, figures etched against the horizon, intimidating in the brilliance of the midday sun. Yet instead of quailing, the travelers pressed forward, their hearts ignited by the richness of their vulnerability. Joshua fell into step beside Caleb, a silent understanding passing like an electric current between them. "The promise will not come without confrontation," Joshua said, his voice steady. "It is our faith intertwined with our fears that will carry us through." "Indeed," Caleb replied, aware of the weight of history pressing upon their shoulders. "But let us remember, every confrontation is also an opportunity for revelation. With every giant we face, what wisdom awaits? What transformation is possible?" The words hung heavy in the air, a collective reminder of faith's unyielding charge as they neared the boundaries of Canaan. As they approached the city gates, the warriors of Canaan emerged, an imposing sight that elicited a murmur of dread from the group. Yet Caleb raised his hand, imposing stillness on the assembly. "Fear not," he proclaimed, his voice unfurling like the wings of an eagle. "Our God has brought us this far, and he will not abandon us now. Remember, we walk not as individuals, but as a divine collective." There was a stirring in the group, threading through the air like the subtle rustle of the wind. But still, doubts festered beneath their resolve. Voices rose, murmurs of hesitation, questions forged in anxiety. "Caleb, how can we face them? Their strength is beyond us." A voice croaked from the back. Another echoed, "What if we perish?" Caleb turned to the fear-stricken faces surrounding him, and a light ignited within the depths of his spirit. "Those fears are not unfounded, but they do not own us," he declared, breath steadying with each word. "We are not here merely to confront giants, but to unveil the fullness of who we are as God's chosen. What if the giants themselves are not the enemy but a reflection of our greatest calling? A challenge pushing us toward our true destiny." In that instantaneous moment, clarity washed over the group, igniting sparks of understanding where doubt once thrived. Their resolve solidified. Faith swelled like a great wave building behind them. "For every giant that stands against us, we shall rise with tenfold spirit. We may stumble, but we stand united." Caleb's fiery words swept through them, bold and unwavering. In that moment of resolve, something extraordinary began to unfold. The very fabric of their beings fused with an ethereal light, a divine assurance illuminating the shadows of doubt that had clung to them. Each fear transformed, shrinking in the light of possibility and potential. The giants, though still formidable in stature, became embodiments of their collective journey, testaments to growth rather than signs of despair. As they stepped closer to the gates of the city, embodiments of their fears and former doubts, fear morphed into anticipation. And amid that holy convergence, a deafening confidence emerged. It propelled them forward, as if borne on the wings of angels. "Together we stand, together we fight. Let us unveil the power of our faith, for we have already been delivered." Caleb bellowed. The fervor of his spirit echoed back in the cries of the travelers. The giants, who had once appeared insurmountable, began to quiver. They beheld the assemblage of believers fueled by shared vulnerability, hearts ignited by collective hope. The ground trembled beneath them as Caleb led the charge. A unified front of warriors stepped boldly into the fray, courage dispelling fear with each definitive stride. In that transcendent moment, miracles unfurled. The giant protectors of Canaan began to tremble, their size diminishing in the presence of the undaunted faith that blanketed the warriors. The breakthrough was not through might alone, but through the unveiling of strength and unity, an ancient truth reviving through a people reborn in faith. As the dust settled and the echoes of their cries reverberated through the once foreboding gates, Caleb turned to his companions, their faces radiant with luminance and assurance. The city now lay before them, a testament to what could be achieved when faith intertwined with community. "Behold, we have not merely entered a land but harvested our courage." In that sacred moment, a revelation rippled through them, a truth more profound than conquest. The giants had ever been a call to faith, a chance to transform themselves, unearthing profound purpose in their shared journey. They were a people who would no longer let fear define them. As they stood united in the newfound dawn, Caleb lifted his arms high, catching the attention of the mighty warrior spirits around him. "Friends, let us carry forth this revelation, for faith is the bridge that transcends giants. In Canaan, we find not only promise but our true selves waiting to be unveiled." And so, They stepped into the heart of Canaan not as mere conquerors but as warriors of hope, each bearing seeds of faith that would flourish in the days, months, and years to come. They had discovered not just a land but a legation inheritance woven through shared courage and the unfathomable strength of belief. The Promised Land was more than a physical territory. It was a testament to the divine narrative echoing through every step they dared to take together, echoing a truth to resonate through generations. Faith, when nurtured and shared, is the courage that binds us and the light that guides us forward, illuminating paths long concealed by shadows of doubt.